Good afternoon and welcome to the CIES webinar number 9. Today's title is very central. It's called Empowering Women's Football for the Future. I would like to start and remember you that the CIES webinars, CIES, the International Center for Sports Studies, Centre International d'Études du Sport in Neuchâtel, is aimed to discuss some of the key issues in sports related to sports, and you can follow us every week. And later, if you didn't have the time to see it, you can subscribe and get the program for the following weeks and get others projects we are doing. I would like to first of all now introduce you to our panel, starting with Shoko. Shokotsui is Japanese. Very international, studied in Japan, worked in Spain, worked in Kuala Lumpur, and she's currently working and talking to us from Amsterdam, where she is. Good afternoon, Shoko. Shoko is an alumni from the FIFA Master 17th edition, and she was very interested with women's football as a player. She's working at MyCujoo, an international streaming company, and very interested in the Japanese development of football and the women's development of showing football. So I'm sure that we will have an interesting point. How is the situation in Amsterdam at the moment?
Yeah, well, I'm still working from home since mid-March, but from June, we've seen that life is slowly returning. The restaurants and cafes are opening again. So I think it's just football we're waiting for, because we won't have any events until September, but slowly things are coming back.
Okay, thank you. So our second speaker is Reyes Bellver. Reyes is a Spanish lawyer working in Madrid. Reyes was in 2015 one of the students of the CIES Universidad Rey Juan Carlos and Spanish Football Federation course, and she was a winning student of the course, and she's working as a lawyer and particularly interested in women's sports rights. And she created, together with others, a project based on women's in sports. So, good afternoon, Reyes. How is the situation in Madrid at the moment?
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity, for inviting me. In Spain now we are much better, so we can go out. I'm in my office working, so much better. Waiting for the football that is in a few days.
Okay, so like in Holland. Our third speaker is a man. Matteo Tassi is working at CIES. Matteo is an alumni of the FIFA Master 13th edition. Matteo has a PhD in anthropology from Roma Sapienza University, and Matteo is currently working on an educational program at CIES, but one of the reasons why we wanted to have him here is he participated in a very interesting project, which was the creation of the Museum of Olympique Lyonnais in Lyon in France, which gave women's a really important part. How are you, Matteo, and how is the situation in Lausanne? I think you're in Lausanne at the moment, are you?
Hi, Pierre. Hi, everybody. Thanks for the invitation. Well, situation in Lausanne is pretty normal now, I have to say. I mean, I have a market nowadays under my window, and it's busy with a lot of people around. So it looks like we are back to normal somehow. Great.
Our last speaker is joining us from Cairo, Meskerem Tadesse. Meski is an alumni from the FIFA Master. From the 16th edition, and Meske is working. After finishing, before she did the master, she was a player and very involved in women's football in Ethiopia. She's from Ethiopia, and she was teaching at university as well. And after doing the master, what Meske did is she worked first for a national federation as a deputy general secretary and then a temporary general secretary before joining the African Football Confederation, working directly on women's football development in Africa. How is the situation in Cairo, Meski, and how are you?
I'm good. Thank you for inviting me, Pierre, and hi everyone. We've been working from home since March. Unfortunately, the number of cases in Cairo and all over Egypt or all over Africa is rising right now. But we hope to resume works, I think, in the end of June. So yeah, that's the situation.
Right. So first, please take all care of you, and
Thank you.
Well, you know, the object of the topic today is how can we combine a phenomenon that has been strongly developing in the last, let's say, 10 years, but has been really increasing the last 2-3 years, which is the place to women in football and the place in women's football, together with a crisis. Currently, the situation is about imagining solutions, and the idea came when in February, before some of the debates regarding organization of competition were really focusing on importance of women's sport, and in March, when the situation began to be difficult for the FIFA Masters this year, we had one of the speakers who came and said probably one of the most touched group from the crisis, maybe women's football. Yeah. Because when there will be some cuts in the industry, the cuts may come first in the reality to be developed on women. But before we discuss this question, I would like to see with all of you, based on the topic we saw about, what you saw on the specific topic you were really working. I would like to start with Matteo from this point of view, with the question of a good practice. Matteo was part of one case which I must say I spoke to him time ago after the experience he made with creating the Museum of Olympique Lyonnais. And this museum is exceptional from the point of view that it is probably the only one I experienced in football where the concept of equality between men and women and the visibility of women in sport is a reality. So I know I spoke with you earlier and you really gave me a will to see it. So can you tell us a bit more about how this idea came and what you managed to do?
Well, thanks, Pierre. You have a great memory because I spoke with you a few months ago. I completely forgot about that. So I will try to recall something to be consistent. Well, no, jokes aside, yes, I was involved in this project, conceiving and delivering the Museum of Olympique Lyonnais. So now I think everybody knows here that Olympique Lyonnais is probably the best women's team in Europe and probably one of the best in the world. So they made history. They won several Champions Leagues recently, and then they are dominating the French league. Now, when you enter the museum, which is conceived to tell the story of the club that started in 1950 in Lyon, you can really understand that there is an equal place for women and men within the museum, which is pretty unique, as you said. The place given to the women's team is absolutely central. You cannot miss it. So now, if somebody knows about museums, probably he or she knows that the way you place things within the museum means a lot. I mean, you can put things at the very beginning, at the very end, in a separate room. The museum is conceived so that you cannot miss the central part, which is dedicated to the women's team, which is already the first important point. And when you go to of course, the most important room of the museum, which is the trophy room, well, there you can see that women outweighed men, because I mean, the Olympic men's team was kind of successful back in the 2000s, but in terms of international success, well, I mean, the women's team is way better, and they put all the trophies together. I mean, they had several options. They could have done differently, like creating a men's room and a women's room for trophies, like just to separate. But they put everything together, which is the red thread for all the museum. I think there is a point which is important here. We live in a world where the way we communicate shapes the world, and the way the club communicates about women and men is extremely important, because it's consistent to what they do on the net, with the social media, etc. So I believe there is a bottom line here, which is strategy. They had a strategy which is not only about being successful on the pitch with the women's team, but creating a consistent narrative for a club which is composed by these two entities, like the men's part and the women's part. And I think for me, this is really the bottom line here. This is really the most important takeaway you can have when you visit the museum, because you can understand easily that it's not only glorifying a team which is unbelievable because they are strong, but mostly they are creating a consistent way of telling a story.
Fantastic, and I think it's introduced very well the question I was to ask Shoko, because what you said, Matteo, and I completely agree, visibility is essential, and the question of showing and making women's football visible has been one of the main challenge of the last decade. You will all four agree about that. But Shoko, tell us a bit in your work how it is to make women's football visible. Yeah. And I would like to add as well, how was it in Japan with the visibility of women's football when you won the World Cup, and what remains out of it?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Pierre. Well, first of all, just to give some context, according to the survey presented by FIFA last year, 38% of the member associations around the world actually broadcast or live stream their women's football competitions. So whereas we've seen huge improvements at the elite level of the women's game, you can see there's still a lot to be done at the long tail amateur level. So what we often say is we need to show the game, to grow the game. And what that means is just by giving visibility, of course, you can reach audiences locally, globally, but there are also many benefits associated. You can create value for your existing sponsors, generate interest from new sponsors. It's also really beneficial for the players because they can promote themselves. They can also analyze their actions, their decisions, the referees and coaches as well. It's also really good for showcasing role models and making sure that the younger generation is interested in women's football and also stays involved. And that lastly, I think it also helps to raise awareness of the reality of women's football today and highlight the successes as well as the
we lost Shoko. We lost Shoko for 1 second.
Sorry.
That's difficulty of the new reality, but people are aware of it. Yes.
Yeah. No. Is it okay now? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, so going back to your question to what happened in Japan. Yeah, in Japan, as some of you might remember, we won the Women's World Cup 4 months after the tsunami, the earthquake, the nuclear disaster. So it was a huge. And we really saw how after the triumph, there was a huge interest in women's football. The participation increased. There were many broadcast deals, sponsorship deals signed, and the players became more famous. You could see them on television. So there was a huge hype. But at the same time, since there wasn't a long-term strategy in place, the momentum only lasted for a few years. And after a few years, they didn't have any interest from the sponsors' broadcasts anymore. So that really goes back to what Matteo mentioned earlier, that there really needs to be a long-term strategy in place for women's football to develop.
Yes. Well, I will move to Reyes and see that from a legal point of view. Reyes has been really working on developing women's women's way of being involved in sport, challenging the reality and having more possibility to take part. Really, at the moment, there is a strong development of legal cases regarding women in sports. Tell us a bit, when you thought about empowering with your group, when you decided to create this group and this platform, what was the logic behind it, and where do you think we are now in a reality of equality in dealing with football in the Spanish case?
Well, thank you, Pierre. First, as I say in other webinars, first I would like to send my support to the people who are suffering the consequences of this virus, especially women's football players. That's my connection, because as a lawyer, and I answer in your question now, I saw now, and I'm dealing now with a lot of problems related to the lack of professionalization that we have now in women's football. I think this is the challenge, and this is one of the main points. And it's in connection also with visibility that you talk a lot, and also with my focus related to the platform Leadership Women Football that I created 2 years ago. Was to promote leadership, women in leadership positions, because if we have more women in leadership position, it's easy to create more diversity and to work more in gender equality issues and in football. And this is also in connection with women's football. So leadership is a big issue. This is a big point in connection with visibility and a strategy. No, I think we need to create a strategy who implies a working in professionalization, and also not only women's football, women in football too. That is really important. We have two big areas to work. And in Spain, we have, due to the COVID-19, the cancellation of the Primera Iberdrola and Reto Iberdrola, the first and the second division in women's football, has been cancelled because of the Spanish Football Federation took the decision to end all non-professional competitions. That's the key point here, because women's football is not a professional competition, but the players are professional because they have a salary. We have a collective bargaining agreement that they signed this year. So this was a really step for women's football in Spain. And we have these differences inside our regulation, because it's not professional, but the players are professional. So we need to also, it's a challenge in Spain.
So they were not treated exactly in the same way that the male were professionals in professional leagues. That's what was dealing with the words. Yes, I get the point. Definitely, very interesting. Thanks, Reyes. I will move to Meski. Meski, you are the one who represents today in the panel the institutions we are trying to develop programs, and particularly in the case of Africa. I had the chance to spend in January some time with Safia and yourself at the CAF, and see your strong will to develop competitions at the level. Tell us a bit what nice has been done in Africa in the last months, in the last years, and where you were kept with the situation.
Thank you very much, Pierre. Yes, as you know, when we went to CAF, me and Safia, the first thing we did was we tried to understand what the situation is. Me coming from a member association, I know the situation in Ethiopia, but that doesn't mean that it's the same situation everywhere. So our first job was literally understand what's happening in Africa. We know that, as everyone in this platform say, that a strategy is the best way to go on to develop women's football. But to develop strategy, you actually need to know where you are standing to move forward. So the first year of our work was mostly focused on gathering information, meeting coaches, meeting instructors, meeting players, and seeing where we can develop women's football or how we can best approach it. So what we found out last year in 2018 was that we lack a lot in development or in participation or in the foundation, and we also find out that there is no really a clear player pathway for women. You can start playing in a school and you will end up maybe in a club, and then after that national team, but there is no really clear pathway for our players. And mostly when they end up or when they end their career, they don't know where they are going to end up. They don't have an after career after football. So we try to see how to approach that. Also, there is no professionalism. Like Reyes says, they are paid, but how much are they getting paid? How much can they actually support their self just by playing football, and how we can approach it? So in 2018, we find these three things are the most important thing to deal with to develop women's football in Africa. And we did a workshop on creating the women's football strategy back in November 2018, where we call all women and football stakeholders, let's say, because there was EXCO members involved, there was the president involved, there was players, former players, coaches, media personnel involved, because to develop women's football, you take all the stakeholders. You cannot do it alone. So we built a strategy last year. It's focused on 5 pillars. It's development, competition, marketing and promotion, professionalization, and social impact. So right now we are actually, if you go to the CAF websites, you can see each pillars or each priority of our strategy being showcasing in our social media and in our website. We are already working on it because our strategy is from 2020 to 2023. We have already created our projects, and we were actually interrupted by COVID while we did one of our projects in South Africa, which was the first zonal instructor course, where we called all the instructors, all the coaches from the South African region, and we give them a course. We literally come back from that course and we went to lockdown. So but this is one of the strategy we are doing, but also side by side, while we are focusing on development, which is really building the foundation and giving a lot of girls a chance to play, to coach, or to be a referee. We are also working on creating a brand identity for African women's football. We know from the media there is an identity for African men football, let's say, where it is really showcased in a really beautiful way, colorful way. We also want to create that identity for women's football, because if you see the stories behind women's football in Africa, it's so beautiful. So we want to integrate that culture, that beautiful history into a brand identity. We are also working on that with an outside company. So we are doing all of this to move forward. But like I said, we are trying to also integrate the stakeholders, the member associations, the governing body, while also integrating the media, the one who can showcase our football, who can showcase the women's football. And also we are working with developing a lot of projects and a lot of small school projects, let's say small projects that can make a little bit change, but it will be for a greater good. So that's what we are doing in Africa right now.
That's some of the issues. That's one of the issues. Isham is one of our alumni from the 4th edition and the former general secretary of the CAF. So great to see you.
Yeah. He remembers me from the questions. He
remembers you from the question. Yes. Well, what I would like to go further, and I think it's very interesting what we heard in the panel from the moment is to imagine some of the elements how we can, see that this crisis is not as a way to just cut development, but try to develop further some of the good example. One of our former alumni who plays a very big role in FIFA women's development. She just we have been just in touch, and she said, well, if there are not any ways to present, to see, have there not been some projects during the crisis that show that women's football has been a way to continue to connect inside communities? I'm sure that some of you are aware of projects that are really offering a new model of collaboration, a new model of projects. One of the very interesting elements, just to give you an example, is a proposal from Lilian Thuram, the former French national football player. And he says, instead of having the list of the male national team players and the list of the female national team players, why don't we have a list of the national team players, full stop, where both have the same status? These are elements, and I think after the crisis we need to reach new models, and that is absolutely important from this point of view. Do any of you have examples of models and elements that have been recently showing new form of understanding collaboration and development where women have a lot to say in sports, and particularly in football? I don't know who wants to say a word on that. I know it's I have myself some responses, but if you I will start, and I will just say some of the new elements that have been very interesting, and I think I would like to go with some of them with you before I go to. We have a lot of questions already, but is a question of the access. I think what Reyes said earlier is very important. The access to leadership in the sense of women who do football as a player, as a director, as a coach, their position in society. Is it worth helping them? How can we combine education and football? How can we combine leadership in football with leadership in society? I mean, it's very interesting that the number of chairperson of federation. Look, I have traditional macho behavior, talking about chairman instead of chairperson. That's important. How many possibilities for chairpersons of national teams, of clubs, national federations are coming? Referees are difficult. How do you see the development of the possibilities for women to be a reality today? Can you give us some example of things that work? Reyes, to start with, please.
Well, it's not an example, but it's ideas for all the attendees in women's football. For example, one element is the identity. I think we have the men's football as a product, And we have women's football, as I saw, is a different product, and with different identity and different public, maybe more familiar. So we need to create with a strategy all the scenarios related to this different product, no, this identity. And I think we can connect innovation in women's football. That is something that it sounds strange, and we have a lot of work to do related to innovation and women's football, because there's almost nothing. For example, data. Talking with leadership positions that I refer you, Pierre, and me before, we need to know more the figures, the data in women's football and women in football, because if we want to develop a right strategy, we need to know how is the situation. Not only, oh, there is no women in football, okay, but it's different United States than Spain, than Colombia, for example. So innovation and more data analysis, I think this is a really good challenge. It's a really good opportunity to develop a project, a company, something to do better inside women's football. We have 2 important documents, but we don't have enough. For example, the women's football survey for last year for FIFA. Yeah. This is really good, and we can see there how many players are as a professional player inside the football family, how many national associations we have with a strategy. That is also a goal inside the FIFA women's football strategy. This is really important. But in leadership, we can see a figure, a number that I never forgot, is 9% of executive leadership positions are women worldwide. 9%. So this is the only document that we have this analysis. So we need to improve in data, because we think that if we don't know how many heads of managers or coaches, referees, we have some from FIFA, but no for other companies. We have a lot of work to do that. Also, FIFPro, with the last report, Raising Our Game, that's also for free in the website. It's really interesting. Is working in these numbers with figures. There are good points, no? Two documents to start. But we need more. We need more to know how is the situation today, and in 4 years, how can change this, or to improve and to develop a strategy. And also my last comment related also to challenges and opportunities to develop something is to create something, not copy-paste from other national association, federation, or country. Make something with the identity and the culture that we have in Japan, in Egypt, Switzerland. Is different. We are different, but we play football, women's football, so it's not the same strategy. And we need to develop the identity in the strategy of women's football to create something good for the future. So we have a lot of job opportunities, so thoughts to develop for people that we are watching us.
I couldn't agree more. There are some points I will come back to later, but I will give the floor to Meski, who has some question.
Thank you, Pierre. In terms of the national team, what you mentioned with Trump's proposal that there should not be a man or women national team, I have an example for that where, for example, when you go for athletics, it just this is my example from my own country. It just say that the national team went for the indoor competition. It doesn't say men or women national team. And mostly when they come back, the prize money they get from the association or the athletics federation or even the Olympic committee is based on like, okay, if she got a gold or if he got a gold, this amount of money. It doesn't say women or men. So there is that example of where there is no distinguishing of a man or women national team. It's just a national team going for a competition. For example, let's say if the French national team go to a competition, we cannot say a woman or men. We can say our national team is going for a competition. Also on the leadership aspect, I think what you mentioned is something I want to give example of. Playing in football or growing through football will give you the chance to speak up and to be present in the football industry. I have an example of one of the good player who's Janine Van Wyk. She is the captain of the national team of South Africa, but she's also a leader. She have projects for kids. She speak out on a lot of subjects. So this is one of the leader we see for the future. This is one of the women we believe that will be involved in the women's game to change or to make it better for tomorrow. On leadership, this is one of the critical aspects my department in CAF is working on. We want to bring more women to the leadership position, the managerial position, the refereeing position, because the more women are involved in football, I think the more we can empower women's football. As Reyes said, if women are not in football, we cannot really call it equality. We cannot even call it a representation. And as the FIFA president once said, football cannot neglect half of the population of the world. You know, so we really need to bring women to football, not just playing, but to the leadership position.
I would like to continue. Shoko, I give you the floor in 1 second, just to make two comments, which are more comments than questions from people. One is from Prich Sharma from Namibia, and her question, I think we answered it, but it goes on that direction. Is like I'm a student, and alongside I'm working to develop football for unprivileged kids and women, but I have a proposal. I don't have fundings. Where to go? And from one as to open an NGO. So maybe later we discuss that. And the other one is from Kubra the other question is from Kubra in Turkey, and she said, breaking through the glass ceiling, lack of female management in clubs or international federations. I would like to hear from you, your thoughts. Thank you, and best from Turkey. So there is this development, these need to know what to do, where to stay, where to start with to make the thing more equal. Shoko.
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly go back to the first question you had about interesting projects and opportunities that have come through this pandemic. I think even in the absence of women's football competitions and matches, we've seen a lot of interesting content being created, especially on social media platforms. I know Reyes on her platform, she's also been doing very interesting discussions with professionals working in women's football. Also, I've seen an initiative in Japan where my classmate from the FIFA Master, Ami Otaki, has used a platform to engage players to have discussions on Instagram Live with each other. So these are all pieces of content that require very little investment. If you have a mobile phone, you can easily create this content. It helps to raise awareness of many of the issues of women's football today. And also, touching upon the point that Reyes mentioned earlier, by creating content, you can also start collecting data about your audience and understand where your audience is coming from, which locations they're watching from, the gender ratio and things like that. And this data is really important to eventually create value and approach your sponsors later. So I think we've seen many initiatives coming through the pandemic, and it also gives us a really good opportunity to reflect upon what we've been doing until now, analyze if there's any room for improvement, and also to innovate, because I believe that whereas the men's game is bound by tradition, history, also a lot of contractual obligations, I feel the women's game has more flexibility to maybe innovate formats, rules. Of course, there's a lot that can be learned from the men's game, and we need to leverage that as much as possible. But women's football is also unique and deserves its own approach.
I may say that at the FIFA Master, we have decided for the last 5 years, I think, to stop having men's or females team. We have a mixed team. That's another of the opportunities that we may think about, and that's one of the questions. Matteo, I have a small question. In your work with the executive programs you develop with CIES and the national federations, I think the percentage is about what Reyes was talking about percentage of male and female who take part in the leadership and administration of the game. Am I right?
Well, I don't have statistics about that, but I believe we are around 10% of women. Not quite sure, but my observation, I mean, it gives me this idea that we have 10% of women. Which is, of course, a pity. And as Reyes, Shoko, and Meske said, I mean, this is something that should be changed. Now, if I can add my 2 cents on that, and I recall a little bit when I was an anthropologist back in the days, I totally agree, and I couldn't agree more when we say, like, of course, we have to have more women in leadership position. But coming from a macho culture, right? You know, Pierre, because you live in my country, actually. I know that there is also another part of the work that must be done, which means mostly working from the bottom. Because even though you had people in leadership position, if you don't have in parallel another strategy to get rid of prejudice and misconceptions and sexual ideas from the bottom. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm not sure that the situation can really be changed. So I would say that things should go in parallel, right, from the bottom, but also from the up.
And it's, if I may say, that's a very interesting difference between women's football being seen in the US, football being seen as a women's sport before being a male sport, and as a university sport. So, it's very, very famous that it's said that Bill Clinton won his election with the football mums, with the soccer mums. So this idea of the parents of the middle class people who send their daughter to play football, which is a reality of the United States. At the same time, in a country like Italy or Brazil, women's football had completely a different vision. One point I would note on this is the importance of organizing international competition on women's football. We saw it in countries where we have courses. It may be in Costa Rica, it may be in Chile, it may be in South Africa, where under 17, under 19 Women's World Cup organized locally were really booming and had a much longer time effect on the development of the women's game and of the involvement of women at leadership position. In Chile, it's not a case. At the time they had the Women's World Cup the first time, was the time the state president was a woman. It helped really to develop that thing. Meske, do we see that countries who organize competition at youth level, it has an impact on the movement as a large?
I think it has an impact because also when you are organizing a competition, you are giving a chance to showcase that women are involved in football, and also competitions have legacies, and then I think this is one of the legacies that any competition leaves. For example, in Cameroon in 2016, when Cameroon hosted the Women AFCON, there was a big push for the national team, and the national team get a lot of backing from the state and from the government, from the sports minister. The team went to the World Cup twice after that, and it was a big boost for them. Also, I believe just not even hosting, even participating in an international or qualifying in an international organization, an international competition will give a women's national team a big boost, a big recognition. And not just the women national team, but the women's football in general in one country can be impacted and can be changed for the better just by participating or qualifying for the big competition. We have seen this in South Africa, in the case of South Africa. We have seen this in the case of Cameroon. In the small country of Gambia, for example, they went to the Azerbaijan 2013 under 17 World Cup, and it was a big boost for them. And it was after that the country created a women's football development desk. Now is run by one of the player who went to the Azerbaijan under 17 competition, by the way, and it did a big boost for the women's football in general in that country. So participating and hosting in an international competition is a big change for women's football.
Yeah, and one of the issues that follows, and we had various questions connected to that, is how do we measure? The concept of measurement and the position of women's football is very important. I mean, we had one question of one of our followers. We will be soon one of the students of the FIFA Master 21st edition, Stanislav Stipkov, and Stanislav said, well, what can we do we have a idea on observation of the percentage of women we are interested in football, and what percentage of them are interested of administrating football? You know, playing and administrating are not necessarily the same thing. And one of the problems we saw, and I will talk from the experience, I agree with Stanislav. We saw from the FIFA Master, initially the girl who did the FIFA Master, when they got a job in sports, they saw it, they're more in, not at the top level, at the leadership position, but in a position where more at secretary or secretarial duties, more than a decision making. I think we see some changes from this point of view. FIFA has a woman general secretary, and some of the other organizations do have women in top position. But one of the recent major debates, I don't know if you want to add on that. Just I wanted to summarize on that. One of the debate we have at the moment is regarding the reality of women's football as a unique element. Is it offering something that is different from male football? Should it still stay under the same rules, same way of organizing, or should we have an alternative development for women professionalism, for example? Should we imagine with the crisis that there was a big discussion in the last 5 years? Top men's club should have a women's section. So the top development of should go in the same way, or should we think about a parallel one? I think it's a moment to imagine about that. There was a discussion in Spain about tacos in Real Madrid women. There were various elements on that. What do you think? Do we imagine a parallel development or an integrated one, or third way? Each of you, I think everybody has a word to say on that. Shoko, to start with.
Yeah, a really good question. I think that it's really in the recent years that we've seen men's teams also opening women's teams. So it's a bit too early to say which is right and which is wrong. Looking at Japan, for example, I've seen success cases in both cases, and cases where a women's team is affiliated to a men's team, but also where a women's team that's a standalone team has also been really successful. And I think there are pros and cons for both. For example, if you are affiliated to a men's team, it could be that you have stronger financial support. You can do many joint marketing activities. In Spain, for example, I see clubs like Barça and Atletico, where the men's teams are also always promoting the women's matches, and the same vice versa. So there are lots of interesting synergies. But then there's also the risk that the women's team could be slightly overshadowed by the men's, doesn't get as much visibility. Whereas if it's a standalone women's team, there could be more autonomy, flexibility. but then at the same time, it could be possible that you have less of a reach, less of a potential to capture new audiences. So there are definitely pros and cons for both. But I would say for the approach moving forward, you need to find a good balance of first making sure that you're included in the overall strategy of the federation or club and to be seen as an important part of the strategy. But then also to develop your own women's football customized approach, because the needs for women's football are also quite different. So I think that's the key to success and development in women's football. And I think we just lost Pierre.
Well, I take Pierre's role for a moment since we lost him. So maybe Reyes, you can continue on that.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Well, I agree with Shoko, and also I think that football is a male-dominated world, and it's something that we can say this is not a problem. There's nothing to understand that the world is male-dominated, no? This is different, that we have a barrier to enter for women, no? So we need to open the wall if we have a high Pierre.
I don't know. Please.
Yeah, I'm talking about the figures that you said before, and also the interest for women, because sometimes, and also in my experience, sports law is also a male-dominated world, and it's something that we it's impossible to fight against 50-50, because sometimes it's not 50-50. It's about to create opportunities. Now, we have one woman that wants to be president of FIFA. We need to support women and also a man to this way to be a FIFA president, no? The same opportunities. So it's not about equality in terms of 50-50. It's about to create opportunities, no? I think if you understand that we are living in a male-dominated world, we can develop the right strategy to open the world for women, and also to create not barriers for women. And also I think about the game. For me, I see that it's a different game, but with the same rules. So it's something a mix, no? It's something different than other sports. I think that it's a different game for a lot of reasons. I think this is a different competition, different development, different strategies, different public, also sponsors. If we check, for example, in Spain, you say Shoko Football Club Barcelona, the male team has a sponsor different than the women's football team. So we have different strategies inside the same club, no? So for me, it's different for this different point of view. Also, the World Cup, we have different sponsors for the Men's World Cup, FIFA Men's World Cup, and Women's World Cup. So we maybe we need to change the vision and stop to compare always with men's football, and we need to create the product with the identity. You said, Shoko, also, or Mesker, that football, women's football is unique. I agree with you. It's unique, different public, different identity. We need to focus on that and to develop different strategies and different. If we always are comparing with, oh, the salary of men, okay, the salary could be a gender equality issue or something related to the job and competition. So it's not simple. So we need to try to think more, not only in the men and women and gender and nothing more. So I think we have a lot of things to think and to develop and to change, no, in this world.
Yeah. Before I continue, we had a question from Rafael Chilangueta on that issue. Why are elite female footballers barred from playing with men? Very big one, huh? I mean, I remember that some years ago, the chairman of Perugia Football Club wanted to sign Brigitte Prinz, who was the best women's footballer, and clearly was banned from the league. So, is it still one of the key issues? I don't know. we want to go on that mixed team.
Mixed. Can I go on that?
Yeah, please.
Okay. Mixed team is a nice idea, but we are talking about women's football, and we want to keep our stars in our side in women's football. I think it's really good if, as long as we are competing enough, like a woman's competing enough, and she can play with the men. But also we have to think about the women's football as a brand, and I think maybe using the word of Joao, if you really want to mix men and women football, then that might be a bad idea for women's football. That's just my idea. Like we really want to keep our stars to our side, and we can do, for example, like a game where we do with FIFA, where CAF hosts big events where we mix our women star with men star. But in terms of also being competitor and the physical factor of men and women, I think it's better that women's football is played by women's footballers, and that men stayed in their side also.
And I get your point. I think where we need to mix is probably in the directors. We see there are very clear statistics worldwide that there is less corruption when it's more a mixed environment, more women are present, and some of the ways to probably have a more transparent way of developing football, gender equality would surely improve on that. I don't know, Matteo, if you have any point on that particular issues, which is about our position as men as well. We have to defend to be accepting that reality.
Well, this is such a complicated question, Pierre. I believe this could be a Pandora's box, and I don't want to that, to be honest with you. So maybe what I have something to say, it's on the first question that we were touching, and I completely agree with what Shoko said and with Reyes said about creating a strategy which is different from a simple comparison with men's football. In any business, copying just a model and a strategy from somebody else doesn't pay off. This is clear. I mean, every business manual would say that, because every value, every product is different. So if you want to create value out of a product, I mean, I call it product in brackets. I mean, what I mean here, you have to, as Reyes said, once again, you need to have a precise understanding of data. You need a strategy, you need a vision, and you need to be unique and different. So this is my point on that, and maybe I agree with Meskerem when she said, I mean, it's good to develop women's football to keep the stars on that side, so that we can grow that. But I mean, it could be we can stay here for hours debating that. And I'm pretty sure that after 6-7 hours, we will be just turning around. So it's such a complicated question. You should plan another webinar on that.
Yeah. I think the question of, for example, of violence of women's football compared to male football. Well, we will have a last point, and then we will finish. Reyes, please.
Very, very short. Only to add, as Matteo said, that also we need the right people to work in women's football, because now I'm watching a lot of people only because it's something good, it's something related to gender equality, it's good for the picture media to have a meeting related to women's football, but it's something very short, only months or 1 year, but you need the right people who believe in women's football to develop a strategy, 4 years strategy, long strategy. So that's my also point to add. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I mean, I think it was a great session. Even if we have some small technological problem, it was very, very useful. I would really like to thank you all. It's an hour we have been present. It is the longest of the webinar we had over the time, but I think it was worth it. There are many points to discuss. There are, as you all four said, many points we may have discussed. I'm sorry we could not take all the questions from the people, but I would really like to thank you all, and we may have soon another debate on it. Many questions to be discussed. Well, we will meet next week. The topic will be completely different. We will be talking about motorsports, and we will talk about how to drive the motorsports during the crisis, and we will have 4 speakers as well, and 3 women and a man again, and we will talk about the develop same day of the week, same hour. Stay connected. You can always impact this course by giving your this webinars by giving your opinions. And if you had no time to see our webinar now, you can watch it later. Thank you very much to all 4 of you. Thank you to the people listening and watching us. And I hope we see each other very soon live. And I'm really hopeful that women's football development will be even better in the future. Thank you very much.